I thrive, I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares, nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario on stereo. I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so no-go, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in. Full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Once again with your host Nick Bernabe here on UCY.TV and the antimedia.org/radio. Had a nice time off, took the last two shows off. Sorry about missing bringing you guys this breakdown, but I just had to take a little bit of time off, recollect my thoughts. We've been going like really hard on this new website, the antimedia.org, the homepage of independent media. Since we launched it early last month, it's been like non-stop. Me and SM Gibson, who also hosts the radio show on Tuesdays and Thursdays, have been like literally working our asses off. So took a little time off, cleared my head out a little bit, and of course I get back on late Monday night, and there's, as usual, a news shitstorm going on. So we're going to be talking about that. Next week we're going to shift back over to a little more of this philosophical debate type of platform, but for now we're going to continue to go over some of this new stuff. I'm going to be joined a little bit later hopefully by Jake Anderson and his partner Jared Salas, who have been working on this awesome crowdfunding campaign to make this documentary about Elisa Lam. And for those of you that are aware of it, very mysterious murder that took place in LA at this very mysterious hotel. And they successfully funded it. They raised $30,000 for their to get this thing started. So they're going to be making this movie. So hopefully we're going to have Jake on in a little bit to talk about that. And for now we're going to go over some new stuff because there's a lot of stuff going on foreign policy, because it appears that we're expanding our reach all over the world right now, and it's getting to be pretty frightening, really. And the media is not talking about this stuff nearly enough. So first, let's just go over some of the basic news here. This is a huge headline out of democracynow.org. More than 1,000 civilians reportedly killed by U.S.-led airstrikes. And that's just basically this month. We're killing a bunch. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of innocent people, innocent civilians that have done nothing wrong. In fact, they've been getting terrorized by ISIS for the last couple years too. I mean, these people have been victimized, and it wasn't that long ago before, you know, the U.S. went over there and knocked out Saddam Hussein. I mean, these people have been living through war after war after war, and ISIS comes along, terrorizes them, and then we come along and start blowing them up. Like, it really is mind-blowing, what's going on with foreign policy with the United States right now. And the fact that the media is basically all over Trump's tweets and, you know, this distraction and that distraction, it's like, it really is. It's just distraction after distraction. It blows my mind. And, you know, tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about why is it that Americans, at this point, at this stage in the game, don't really care that much about, you know, about what we're doing around the world. I mean, everybody wants to talk about Trump's tweets. Everybody wants to talk about just like inconsequential stuff. And there's just so many like straw men being built up and torn down that everybody is focusing on instead of focusing on these really, really big issues. I mean, the U.S. empire, or whatever you want to call it, is spreading itself out extremely thin. I mean, the other thing that we don't want to forget about here is that there's a huge hype up to war going on right now with China. Like, I haven't seen this many different hotspots since I started covering and really paying attention to geopolitics. And this really is the biggest news story right now, is what's going on. And let me just read off some headlines. And I'm going to talk about this the main story right now on the antimedia.org is war between the U.S. and China brewing in the South China Sea. So, I mean, that's a really good article to go check out by James Holbrooks, who's been covering what's going on over there in China and Korea very closely. Israel trying to drive a wedge between Russia and Iran over Syria. U.S. general wants more troops in Europe to fight Russia. I mean, there's just a report about airstrikes, the changing of the rules on airstrikes to allow more civilians to die by Human Rights Watch. I mean, there is really bad foreign policy stuff going on everywhere, all over the world. And the reason why I say this is the big story is we're paying for this shit. Like, we're paying for it. I think that's the thing that, like, people forget. It's like, oh, Trump blew up up to 300 civilians in this building in Mosul. It's like, yeah, Trump may have, Trump may be in charge right now, but we're all paying for that stuff. Like, we're paying for that. Obviously the issues with Flint are ongoing. We just covered a story on the Anti-Media several days ago about how they're discovering lead out here in California in the waters in the elementary schools. In fact, at higher rates than in Flint. I mean, we're bombing people's infrastructure out in Iraq and Syria, and our infrastructure here is like tainted in lead. Our kids are drinking lead. And we're blowing up buildings and bridges. And apparently we hit a dam yesterday that is already kind of on the edge of, on the verge of collapse over in Syria. This dam was built a very long time ago by the Soviet Union in Syria, and we hit it with an airstrike. So, like, I want to know. My question, why isn't this a story that people care about right now? Like, why isn't it, the single biggest story? Like, Trump is massively expanding the foreign policy in this country. I mean, Obama ran on an anti-war platform, didn't he? I mean, Democrats were upset about Bush's foreign policy. What's changed? Like, what has changed? I mean, Trump came in, his entire presidency so far has just been a distraction. Did Russia do this? Did Russia do that? Did Russia? And none of the media is being very critical about what's going on with this foreign policy. That, of course, Obama didn't make any better, but Trump is just making it a lot worse. So, this to me is a huge story. And I'm trying to figure out why people aren't that concerned about it. And so, I was thinking about it, and one of the things that I think is going on is the fact that now it's less of we're not really in that scenario anymore where it's like Vietnam and we're pumping 100,000 troops into Iraq and Syria, and a bunch of guys are coming home in body bags and stuff. But we're flying like drone wars. Like we're fighting a cowardly war around the world in all these different countries. I mean, we're operating drones in it's hard to say exactly how many, because a lot of them, they won't even acknowledge that they exist. But, it's safe to say that we're operating drone wars in between 7 and 10 different countries right now. And one of the issues is that American troops aren't really on the line as much as they would have, as much as they were during Operation Iraqi Freedom and the Afghan War. Although the Afghan War continues on, there's not nearly as many reports of American casualties, and so I think that's one of the big issues. Is the reason people aren't really caring about this is that it's drones that are being put into harm's way, not human beings on our side of the equation. Now, again, going back to this Democracy Now! Headline, 1,000 people killed, civilians killed in U.S. airstrikes. I mean, that's news, isn't it? I mean, should be like, what the hell are we doing over there? How did we just kill 1,000 people? That's crazy. That's like 1/3 the size of 9/11, and 9/11 is like the biggest, thing that is apparently ever happened to the United States. We just killed 1/3 of the amount of people that they say died on 9/11, but it's not a big news story apparently. Like, how is this happening? Like, how is this going on? I don't understand it. It really blows my mind. Like, it is just ridiculous. I don't know how else to say it. It really is. But how long can this continue? How long are we going to allow this cowardly drone war to continue? We're flying drones all around the world, blowing up people, most times not even hitting the right targets. Or if we do, we take civilians down with it. We're making people hate us. And, the terror attack that happened last week in England, I mean, that was terrible, but it was 5 people that died. But that was like a huge, huge story. It's like, oh, a Muslim guy who turns out wasn't that Muslim because he binged on alcohol and cocaine. Anyone who knows a Muslim knows they don't do any drugs or drink. So the guy is like, goes out and kills 5 people in England, and it's like the biggest news story of the week. And then our airstrike blew up 200-300 people in one strike, and it's like, big deal. Innocent civilians. So in the same breath, people go around and, they say, oh, it's so sad that happened in London. Those damn refugees, we need to ban them. It's like, and then in the same week, we blow up 300 innocent people in Iraq, and nobody says a word about it. There's crickets. These things correlate. That's the thing. These things correlate. If we're blowing up neighborhoods in Iraq, we're going to create refugees. If we topple sovereign governments in the Middle East, we're going to create unrest. Unrest leads to, what turned in Syria into somewhat of a civil war, and that creates unrest, and that creates refugees, and the refugees flee those places. people in the United States don't like refugees. Many people in Europe are now getting a distaste for refugees, not because they've been committing a bunch of crimes and stuff, but just because it's an easy scapegoat to target. There are other people, they don't speak the language, they look different, they've got a different culture and stuff, and so it's an easy scapegoat. Because if you look at like the data that is there, you'll see that the refugees aren't creating a bunch of crime waves or anything like that. A lot of that stuff is propaganda. Most of it is propaganda. I mean, sure, there are some instances where refugees and immigrants commit crimes and commit bad crimes, but it's not like there's some crime wave. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. The InfoWars people and people similar to them, they write those headlines because they make them a lot of money, because people believe that stuff. They believe that stuff, unfortunately. We're having trouble connecting to our co-host for some reason, but we're going to try to get him on. We'll see what happens. But, these things correlate. Like, we can't, Trump ran on this very anti-refugee campaign, right? He ran on an anti-refugee platform. So you would think that his supporters would be interested in creating less refugees, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like his supporters don't care about how refugees are created. They just care about keeping them out of the United States, which to me is like not only short-sighted, but it's very cold. It's very like heartless. And I know a lot of these people make fun of snowflakes for having feelings and shit, but you can't just turn the other way while our government blows up innocent people on the other side of the world and then turn around and say, well, those people are the bad people. Those people trying to get out of the war zones where our bombs are dropping, they're the bad guys. How does that make any sense? Like I try to wrap my head around this. I try to wrap my head around this often because I've been trying to figure out the logic or the reasoning behind these attitudes, but I'm yet to figure it out. It really is mind-blowing stuff. I don't get it. But I'll tell you what, it can only go on for so long before people get really, really mad at us. I think there's a lot of people out there that already are extremely upset about what the United States is doing and the fact that we're using drone wars and the fact that we don't have the courage to send our own guys over there to do our dirty work. But what in the hell are we actually doing? Like what are we trying to accomplish over there? Because here's the thing. The other platform Trump ran on, and I posted an image about this on my own personal Facebook page this morning, is that he said he was going to defeat ISIS in 30 days. Like, he literally said that. Of course, he's now backtracked. And, no, I didn't say I was going to defeat ISIS in 30 days. I just said I was going to defeat ISIS. Well, you may be able to beat ISIS in the battlefield with overwhelming military might, but you're never going to get rid of the underlying issue here, which is, why are there terrorists that hate the West? Like, why do they exist? Why are there people in the world that don't like the United States? Are they born? Like, are people born and like you're born and your first instinct, you know what? Screw America, they suck. That's my first instinct. Like, is that what goes on, or do you think that there's some reasoning behind why people want to harm the United States? I tend to lean towards people have reasons why they do things. Like, sure, there's instinctual things, there's things that people just do, but I tend to think that when people carry out complex actions, like for instance, a terrorist attack, people have reasoning behind it. There's reasons why they do stuff like that. The reason why people try to harm the United States, I mean, all you gotta do is look at what the people say. go back and we wrote several articles on this. I think we have 2 or 3 in-depth articles on the Orlando shooter. Can't remember the guy's name, but we all remember the guy that went to the gay nightclub in Florida and shot a bunch of people, killed a bunch of people. He made a bunch of phone calls to the local police and the hostage negotiator and the people that try to de-escalate situations or whatever. And the FBI had suppressed all of these transcripts and recordings. They didn't want them coming out for some reason or another, maybe because of the content of what they said. But here's what the guy was saying. He's like, the reason I'm doing this was because you guys are blowing up people in Afghanistan and Syria. That's why he said he was doing it. And so to come over to look at like the Trump phenomenon, and obviously people voted for Trump not because he was a racist, but because he said he was going to do stuff that sounded good. Defeating ISIS in 30 days, it sounds great, right? But back to the point I was trying to make, like you may be able to defeat, quote unquote ISIS in the battlefield, but by defeating them, you're just sowing the seeds of the next terrorist movement. So, I mean, how many years? It was only a couple years ago when Al Qaeda was the big threat, right? Al Qaeda was who we were going up against. We were in Iraq because supposedly Al Qaeda wasn't in Iraq before then. I mean, Iraq is a big mess. I mean, we should never gone there, but Al Qaeda wasn't there before we went there. We knocked out Saddam Hussein. Al Qaeda came to us in Iraq. They weren't there before. They came there to fight against us. Like, we didn't go there to wipe out Al Qaeda. We went there to wipe out Saddam Hussein, and Al Qaeda came to us. And so if Trump's people want a anti-terror president, they need someone that isn't going to be making these drone wars or sending troops into Syria or sending 2,500 troops into Kuwait to be deployed into Iraq. Like, Trump is not an anti-war an anti-terror president. In fact, let me try to pull this article up here. Trump is going to be going around and creating terrorists. That's what he's doing. He may defeat ISIS, right? But he's in the process going to be creating a bunch of new terrorists. Because if you look at why people want to harm the United States and other countries in the West, 9 times out of 10, it has to do with imperialistic occupations and military presence in these countries. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria now. People don't like us being there. People don't like us taking their resources. People don't like us taking their oil. I mean, we literally knocked over the Iranian government and established the Shah. This was decades ago. We did it pretty openly for their oil. And that makes people resent you. And that's exactly why the government in Iran right now is so anti-American, anti-Western, because of what we've done. Like, they wouldn't hate the United States if we didn't do bad shit to them. And so they've got the people of Iran. Most of the people over there don't even dislike the United States. They dislike our government. But the reason why they have that crazy extreme, Khomeini government is because it's reactionary. It's reactionary to what the United States and Britain did to them a long time ago. And they're able to continue to use any time we go over there trying to meddle or, just our presence in Syria, the Iranian government is able to use that to, solidify its public support. and to continue to get its people to support it. If it weren't for all the factors over there trying to influence and undermine Iran, they wouldn't have an extreme government. It would probably be very relaxed and very moderate, in fact. But anyway, back to the point here. I mean, we're going in there right now in Iraq and in Syria, and we're blowing up people and buildings and infrastructure, many people who are innocent. Every time you blow up an innocent person, you run the chance of radicalizing one of their family members or one of their friends or their spouse or whatever. If you blow up a guy's wife in a drone strike, what do you think that guy's going to think? Do you think he's going to say, "Oh, America, yeah, I hate them because they're so free"? No. That's a fairy tale. That's what the media tells you. That's what George W. Bush tells you, and that's what Trump wants you to believe. They don't like you because you're killing their family members. I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't feel that way? I know I would. If you killed someone I cared about, I'd be real mad, and I'd try to kill you back. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. It really isn't. But the grip of the propaganda is so strong that people still believe that shit. Like, people still believe that. The average voter, which happens to be like the baby boomer type of people, they believe that crap. They really do. They really do believe that shit. And the dehumanization has been going on. I mean, particularly strong after 9/11. This Muslim dehumanization of, all Muslims are terrorists, all Muslims are extremists, all Muslims are this, all Muslims are that. That's been going on. Like, the mainstream media has been pushing that shit since 9/11. And then at the same time, they pretend that they're not. So, let me just give you a quick example here. And this is pretty simple. Just like what we just talked about with England, that terrorist attack that happened last week. So a Muslim guy goes and he kills 5 people, and it's like the biggest story of the week, and it's like, oh my God, and England even talked about, we got to end encryption because we got to end encryption because terrorism, and that's a huge story, right? And then the U.S. kills 1,000 civilians this month. Very, very little coverage, or if it is, it's like in the passing. Or it's like, well, the U.S. may have, or it may be, they might have been responsible for it. But when a Muslim guy goes and does something, it's like all over the news. It's like just news cycle day after day after day. It's like, Muslim guy did horrible things. And then it's terrorism automatically. But then when it's like a white guy that goes and shoots up a black church, for instance, it's not terrorism. It's a troubled, angry young white guy, acting on his own. But when a Muslim does something, it's like the whole religion, Muslim terrorism, and terrorism. Remember this. Terrorism is the trigger word. You say terrorism to an American person who's been watching TV for his whole life, it triggers their brains. They think, they automatically, you get an emotional response. Propaganda 101. And so after 9/11, they dehumanized Muslims massively, and made it seem like, the New York Times, Washington Post, and all these guys made it seem like, Muslims are less of human beings than Americans. That's what they made it seem like. And day in and day out, this propaganda plays out, but subtly. They never actually come out. You never see the New York Times come out and say, you know what, we should ban Muslims. We should, ban Muslims and spy on mosques and surveil anybody of the Islamic faith. You're never going to hear the New York Times say that. What actually happens is they subtly push anti-Islam propaganda, and then when someone actually says it, like Donald Trump, where he came out and said, oh yeah, we should ban Muslims, then the New York Times is like, I can't believe Donald Trump. That's so horrible. I can't believe he did that. That's so despicable. That's not the American way. That's not the American way. We can't allow a presidential candidate to talk like that. All Trump was doing was capitalizing on the same propaganda that these same mainstream media outlets were spreading ever since 9/11. That's all he did. All Trump did was capitalize on existing sentiment, where people are deathly afraid of Muslims in this country, even though you're more likely to get, killed by lightning than you are to be killed by a, Muslim terrorist. But I don't see anyone going around trying to ban lightning. You know what I mean? But this is the hypocrisy, and here's the funny thing too. Here's another little wrinkle in this, is that despite the fact that Trump capitalized on all of this anti-Muslim propaganda, he's now running a campaign against the media. Oh, the media lies, the media does this, the media does that. And at the same time, his supporters, anytime you criticize Donald Trump, go look on the anti-media Facebook page right now and look. You have to go back a few days because we haven't covered Trump in a couple days. Go look at anything we post that criticizes Donald Trump and read the comments, and you'll see people, oh, you're just as bad as CNN now. You guys might as well just call yourselves antitrump.org or something. Like, his followers have been duped so badly, they don't even realize that not only is Donald Trump a creation of the media, but they think that the media is against him, and that anybody that criticizes him is basically agreeing with the mainstream media. I mean, we're talking about the same media that gave Trump several $billion in free airtime. Now, I'm not saying that the media likes Donald Trump, like, personally, or they like him as a president. I'm not saying they dislike him personally or dislike him as a president. Donald Trump makes money. Donald Trump makes them a lot of money. Go look at the ratings. Go look. All the ratings are up. Go look at the audio, the leaked audio from CEO of CBS saying, you know what? He literally said this, and this isn't verbatim because I don't have the exact quote on me. Donald Trump may not be great for the country, but damn, he's good for ratings. I shit you not. The CEO of CBS said that in a call to investors. Not playing. So I think that we need to look at this in maybe a less complicated way, and in ways like, well, there's a conspiracy against Donald Trump, or there's a conspiracy in favor of Donald Trump. It's like, maybe it's more simple. It's money. These guys make a lot of money from covering Donald Trump, whether it's critical or positive or whatever. He received billions of dollars of coverage during the primaries. And Hillary Clinton, part of Hillary Clinton's plan was to get the media to legitimize and cover Donald Trump. And that's exactly what they did, and that's how he won. Not to mention, anybody could have beat Hillary Clinton because she was awful, but that's beside the point. The point I'm trying to make here is that, first of all, Trump is a creation of the media's propaganda. And the second point is that it's very ironic that his people think he's not. And they think that he's some crusader against the lying mainstream media. Don't get me wrong. We hate the mainstream media. They're awful. But we need to have a better grasp on what the media is actually doing. Because they're not against Donald Trump. They're distracting us with bullshit stories of Donald Trump and not telling us that we're killing 1,000 people this month in our global empire that is expanding at a rapid rate and that is stretching thin and that is about to be on a collision course with China. So I think we have Jake trying to call in, but I'm having the same issue that I had with DB as far as loading these calls. So I'm going to reset real quick. Don't go away because we're going to come back with a couple of awesome guests. And just give me about 2 minutes to reset the program, and we'll be back. And we're back. Let me see if we can get our callers on the line and see if we can make this happen. Let's see what happens here. I don't know what's wrong with our program, but worst case scenario, I'll go it alone. I've done it before. I'm not scared. But yeah, it's just it's a strange phenomenon, and it is just the propaganda stuff. It works. The propaganda has worked so well that the people supporting Trump think that they're seeing through the propaganda. Like the genius of it is so good. Like I think it's horrible what's going on, but it's so genius the way that these people have worked it out. Is that all of these people have fallen for all this propaganda. And that's why Trump got elected. And they think that they're anti-propagandists and that they're seeing through it and that they're above the fray of the media's manipulation. That to me is the most interesting aspect of all this. Okay, we're still having trouble getting these callers. Let's see what happens here. All right, if we can't get the callers on, I'm just going to keep going on some of these news stories. Like I said, we're going to come back next week, and we're going to be talking a little more on the philosophical end of things. I know we've kind of drifted off into that right now. But China. This is a big, huge variable that we need to be paying very, very close attention to. We've been covering this and talking about this on the anti-media for a while now. And again, going back to the media coverage here, it's very slanted, again, against China and in favor of the U.S. Empire, basically. Because, what are we doing over in the South China Sea? That's on the other side of the world. Anyway. China has more or less been militarizing a bunch of areas over in the South China Sea, which is, an area that goes up against their country. And it's kind of like, think about it like this. It's like the U.S. putting a military base on Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. So China is kind of branching out and establishing potential military bases on islands that are in the South China Sea, close to their country, and trying to basically set up military capabilities on these islands. The U.S. has been very vocal, along with Japan and others, that this isn't okay, and we're telling China, hey, you can't do this. So this has kind of got the U.S. and China on a collision course, and we're not talking about a little drone war in Yemen or, not to downplay the horrible stuff that's going on in Yemen, but China is not a country that we can just say, oh, we're flying drones in, we're going to start bombing, and try to do something about it. That's not the situation we're dealing with here. China, the case possibly could be made that China is more powerful than the USSR ever was. In some aspects, of course, they don't have nearly as many nuclear weapons and stuff like that. But economically speaking, China took a different route than the USSR and has a thriving economy. They've in some ways, they're more capitalist than the United States on that aspect. So, China has a huge thriving economy and 1.5 billion people. The USSR, I don't know how many people they had at their peak size, but Russia doesn't have hardly over 100 million people. It's about a third the size of the United States. China is coming up on like 5 times the size of us. It's not a joke. It's not the way Trump has been kind of negotiating with them and in ways where he's been disrespectful and stuff. Like, this isn't a country that we should be going around playing around with and trying to like make like a crazy bargain with. I think it's not a good idea to be going around trying trying to do like hard negotiations with the Chinese government when we're the ones kind of imposing. And this is, looking at the media coverage, Forbes has a piece talking about how China is bullying everybody around there. And CNN is trying to get them to explain why they're militarizing and stuff. The thing is, though, is that the mainstream media in the U.S., it's critical of military intervention only of other countries. So let's go back, a couple months to Aleppo, and when Russia was helping the Syrian government take back Aleppo from the Syrian rebels. This was a news story every day where it was like, oh my God, Russia is committing mass atrocities. Russia is committing war crimes. Russia is doing horrible things in Aleppo. I can't believe they're doing that. How are we just going to stand by and idly let them do this? The U.S. should get involved and help save those people from Russia, right? Now, fast forward a few months, we're doing almost the same exact thing, right? In Mosul. 1,000 people dead. 300 people in one attack. How is that any different? But do you see CNN going, oh, Russia should get involved. China needs to go into Mosul and prevent the United States from hurting civilians. That's just horrible. Can't believe they're doing that. Do you hear that coming out of CNN? Do you hear that coming out of the Washington Post? No, you don't. You don't. You hear them talking about Trump's tweets, and you hear them talking about this wild goose chase that is, did Russia help Trump get elected? Still no evidence of that, by the way, but it's the main news narrative that's been going on ever since the election. Never mind the fact that we're trying to start up a war with North Korea. That's secondary compared to this wild goose chase that has no evidence that Donald Trump was helped by the Russians. And so this is the thing. I think the Trump supporters are kind of right in some ways, where it's like, yeah, the media is being horribly critical of Trump in ways that are dumb. They talk about his tweets. They talk about him getting in Mack trucks. They talk about the size of his hands and blah, 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 blah. But what they don't talk about is this huge-ass empire going on. We're on the verge of starting a war with North Korea. We're getting pretty close to a standoff with China in the South China Sea. We just put troops into Syria. We're sieging Mosul right now. We killed 1,000 civilians over there. A report just came out that Trump is talking about getting more involved in Yemen, which is a huge Saudi Arabian mess that is responsible for tons and tons of war crimes. But that stuff isn't being critically covered. Like, where is the goddamn coverage of that stuff? Where is it? Besides over here on the Anti-Media Radio and the antimedia.org. Like, these are the stories we need to be talking about. These are the biggest issues of our time. These drone wars, just because our guys aren't dying over there, like, we can only continue these wars without our people dying for so long until the shit comes home to roost. Like, how long do you think we can continue bombing 10 countries indefinitely without something happening here where a bunch of civilians die, whether it's a terrorist attack or a war, or, somebody finally decides to fight back or strike back? Like, how long do you think we can allow this to go on and not do anything about it? I mean, with Obama, I get it. Obama was a progressive, supposedly. He was a liberal, supposedly. He ran on a goddamn anti-war platform. When he took office, his supporters went to bed. They went and laid back on the couch. They turn on MSNBC every day. They didn't even know. I guarantee you that half of Obama supporters don't even know that he toppled the Libyan government. They probably don't even know what the United States' role in Syria was. They think he ended the war in Iraq. They think he ended that. They think Afghanistan is over. Like, half of his supporters probably think that. I'm not even joking. Not. I get it with Obama. I get it. You know, the left, the Democrats, they are the anti-war people, right? I get that, right? So with Obama, he got away with doing all these foreign policy things, albeit nothing huge. Like he didn't do any invasions or anything like that, but you know, he did some real bad stuff. He destabilized Libya. He helped destabilize Syria. He was incompetent enough to allow this, whatever happened, however ISIS came about, you know, Obama had something to do with that. You know, so Obama was not good on foreign policy by any measure. But now that Trump's in office, right, and the left is now, you know, how many people marching against Trump after he got elected? Like, I was like, after the election, I was like, you know what? I wasn't going for Hillary Clinton. I wasn't going for Trump. I knew one of them was going to win. But, you know, there's obviously positives and negatives of either one. With Trump, I was like, you know what? If Trump wins, the good thing is that we can maybe have an anti-war movement again because, you know, all these Democrats, progressives are not okay with war, right? At least I thought. So they're going to help us oppose these wars. But so far, all I've seen is a bunch of people saying that Trump is a Putin operative and that they need to take his phone away because he's embarrassing us with his tweets. That's what I'm saying from the left. Not the left, sorry, but from the Democrats, because the Democrats aren't on the left. They're center-right at this point. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of progressives, and a lot of my friends are progressives that are genuinely opposed to Donald Trump and opposed to the militarism that's going on right now. I'm not saying everyone, but a lot. The Democratic Party in general, the DNC, all of them. Hillary Clinton's biggest beef, she came out today and said, oh, it's sad that he didn't put more women in his government. Never mind the fact that we blew up how many women just this week in Mosul. No big deal, but he didn't put enough women in his government. I mean, this shit is it's a distraction. It's a distraction with all this nonsense, superficial bullshit coverage of Donald Trump. And unfortunately, maybe this is part of Trump's strategy. Maybe this is Bannon's genius playing itself out in a way that we just don't realize yet. But all of this bullshit coverage insulates Trump. It insulates him. It actually helps him because, first of all, he could say, oh, look how stupid the media is and fake news and blah, blah, blah. But people are going to get so tired of hearing about Donald Trump that when some real shit happens, like what's going on right now with all these civilians dying in Iraq, in Mosul, when some real shit like that happens, no one's going to believe the media's criticism of Donald Trump because they've been criticizing him for bullshit all this time. You know, and so I think Trump maybe lays traps for the media on Twitter, and he does stupid shit on purpose. First of all, to like deflect and to distract. Second of all, to like insulate himself from future attacks. I mean, if that's what he's doing, it's brilliant. That's Bannon working behind the scenes because that guy knows how the media works. He brought Breitbart from a little rag to one of the most influential news outlets in the country in just several years. Bannon should not be underestimated. The guy knows how it works. And maybe he's the one engineering all of this stuff going on and purposely letting the media run circles. Meanwhile, the real big stuff, like I said, the empire runs rampant. No one even notices. No one's even aware that it's happening. And all this stuff with North Korea, here's the other thing, man. Here's another piece of hypocritical news that's going around. Everyone's like, oh, North Korea, they may have, they may launch nuclear weapons and, this is horrible. The UN came out the other day and they're trying to push for to ban nuclear weapons throughout the world. And the United States is one of the main dissenters. No, we can't ban nuclear weapons. That's not okay. First of all, the United States is the only country in the world to have offensively used nuclear weapons. And second of all, we're over here causing up a huge fuss about North Korea and that they potentially could use a nuclear weapon. Then why don't you want to get rid of nuclear weapons? Like, when was the last time North Korea invaded somebody? When was the last time North Korea meddled in someone else's election. When was the last time North Korea bombed somebody? Can anybody name that? I mean, we had to go back to the 50s, to the Korean War, where like we went over there and started invading the place and they fought back. That was the last time they fought anybody. This shit with North Korea, all this media coverage is like, oh, you know, Kim Jong is crazy and Kim Jong is this, Kim Jong is that, and rocket test and missile test and nuclear test and blah, 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 blah. Like, we got a bunch of military bases right there in South Korea. Like, and they're the aggressor? North Korea is the aggressor when we've lined their borders with military equipment, missile defense systems, nuclear capable, you know, submarines and aircraft carriers and all that stuff. They're the aggressor? Like, what? What? How does that make any sense? How is North Korea the aggressor? And so, again, the empire gets a pass on North Korea. The empire gets a pass on China. The empire gets a pass on Yemen, Iraq. In fact, I saw in the New Yorker there was an opinion piece saying, well, the only way to reduce civilian casualties in Iraq is to send more U.S. troops in there. Like, wait, what? That's your solution? Like, we got to protect civilians by sending in more military equipment. Here's maybe something that they should be talking about instead. Had we not militarized the shit out of Iraq to begin with, ISIS would have never captured those billions and billions of dollars worth of weapons in Mosul in the first place. A huge chunk of the weapons that ISIS is in possession of were created by American companies and financed by American taxpayers. Or are we just going to forget about all that stuff? Because now the media is telling us we need to send more military equipment, more troops, more bombs over there. And the coverage is stark. The coverage is a stark contrast compared to Aleppo, because in Aleppo it was just Russia indiscriminately slaughtering civilians. If you look at the coverage of Mosul, it's ISIS is using human shields and our bombs are accidentally killing civilians. So, you know, this is just some more of this, you know, hypocritical media stuff that needs to be talked about. And the media coverage right now of Trump is garbage. The critical coverage is crap. It's distraction. It's superficial. And then the coverage that he gets a pass on is the major stuff. It's the important stuff, you know. And it's kind of like how, you know, like, who was that lady that didn't want to let two gay people get married or whatever? It's like these kind of wedge things that are not, I don't want to say inconsequential, but are less pressing. Like, there's 1,000 people dying this week. Like, let's talk about that. Not the superficial kind of social, you know, polarizing stuff, but that's what they like covering. That's what they cover to keep everybody engaged in that. And it's like, well, I think that lady should be fired because gay people should be able to get married. And then there's other people like, no, she should have the right to free speech and her religion, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's what we talk about when the government shouldn't be involved in marriage, like, at all. Like, that shouldn't even be a debate. The government should not be involved in delegating marriages to begin with. Like, let's just do that. But then let's not allow ourselves to be distracted by that nonsense. Like, you know, like, it's just, oh man, it's a mess. It's a mess. And, you know, the Democratic Party, I hope nobody listening tonight is out there hoping that the Democratic Party is like going to do something to stop Donald Trump. They're not. They're not. At least not on the important issues. I mean, I'm sure they're going to make a stand on some stuff that is like the Supreme Court pick or whatever. I'm sure the Democrats are going to vote no, and it won't even matter anyway, but whatever. But they're not going to stop him on these big, big issues because it's bigger than Republican and Democrat. I mean, we're talking about the military-industrial complex and the deep state. You know, these are big, unelected, nonpartisan groups of people who have the power and the resources to control the government regardless of who is in office. And knowing that, despite the superficial opposition to Trump in the media, I tend to lean towards that this is all part of some stupid shit that they had wanted to do all along. Get some doofus in office that can get everybody arguing while they just continue to do what they're going to do. And that's exactly what's going on. Exactly what's going on. Trump increased the budget for the military, almost $60 billion, right? Send troops all over the world, blowing up civilians. Drone strikes have increased. What was it? 432% under Trump. And Obama was like the drone president. You know, he was like, oh, Obama may go down in history as the president that normalized drones, right? Drone strikes. Trump has increased it 432%. Why was the anti-media the only news outlet to cover that? You know what I mean? Like, the big issues go ignored, or they pretend they're not happening, or they make them sound like we're doing the right thing. You know, like the New Yorker saying, oh, we got to send more troops into Iraq. That's the solution here. And then one of the generals today was saying, oh, we need more troops in Afghanistan to, you know, swing the momentum in our favor. How many times have we put more troops in Afghanistan already? And how many times has that failed? Like, that's one of the first things Obama did when he went into office was he had an Afghanistan surge and sent a bunch of guys over there to swing the momentum in our favor. And then when they felt like, okay, the momentum is in our favor, they pulled the U.S. guys out, and the Taliban took back over. Like, Afghanistan killed the USSR. We seem to be wanting to make that same mistake right now. And it would be kind of you know, ironic or maybe comical if it weren't for the fact that a bunch of people are dying and we're all financing this stuff. Like, we're paying for it. Your kids are paying for it. Even if you don't have kids yet, they're paying for it. Like, we're paying for it, and a bunch of people are dying. And people in these countries that we're in are not able to live their lives the way that they should be able to. And instead, they're trying to escape because we've either directly or indirectly messed up the place where they're trying to live. And they come here, and then the people here in this country, the patriots, say, oh, you guys are the problem. Why are you guys coming to our country? Like, you guys are terrible people. You live in the Stone Ages. Yeah, maybe because we blew up their house, so they're living in dirt. Maybe that's why. I mean, these are the conversations we need to be having. Why are the refugee crises going on? Why is the government broke? Why are our roads falling apart? California just announced today that they're calling for an increase in taxes to repair our roads in California. This country has the 5th largest economy in the damn world. And we can't afford to fix our roads over here. So we got to raise taxes as if we weren't paying enough already. It's unbelievable. Let's talk about this. Thank you for tuning in. Anti-Media Radio. Catch you next week. Peace out.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.